Will 2024 bring about the doom of the comic book retailers as we know it? Something that has been a hot topic in the comic book kind of like landscape for the last year. There definitely is a lot of pains that the comic book retailers are feeling, and some people have assumed that because the comic book retail spaces are going to be hurting, that means the comic book industry is hurting, but that's not necessarily the case. Actually, the comic book industry is being projected to grow at about a 5% rate year to year. And that projection and everything that I've read around it is assuming that that's going to occur all the way up until 2028. So that means that every year up until that year, they're projecting that comic book sales will go up by 5%. So that's pretty sizable amount. But what is the retail space kind of facing? There are some things, the more I read into it, that I began to understand that this comic book retail kind of like space and what's occurring, it's actually more nuanced than something like just Marvel and DC causing problems for it. Like some of the articles I read were that none of them were ever really able to kind of get over that COVID hump. You know, some of the other research that I did was saying that a lot of comic book sales went up during COVID. And me myself, I can give my firsthand experience that I actually had a lot more sales during the COVID era because I think more people were at home just trying to read. And there's certain things that comic retailers could have done in that time that they didn't. One thing being, a lot of them closed up shop even though they could have mailed me my comics. And they just closed shop. That was a missed opportunity on their part. And I bet you a bunch of comic book retailers were doing just that. And I know of one that began to deliver the comic books for the local comic book readers. You know, for their regulars that had pull lists, they were dropping them off and they were asking the customers to go ahead and pay for them online. So like a lot of times when people are talking about this doom, they're talking about the doom of a business model as it has been, right? Like even when people talk about the ending of the world, they talk about the ending of the world as we know it. Not necessarily that the world is going to just self-explode and there will be no more planet Earth, but rather that the way we've been functioning, or the fact that we've been the dominant species on Earth, will no longer be the case. But here goes some things that I read that I was like, okay, these are legitimate obstacles that comic book retail space have to kind of, jump over, like find a way to maneuver around. One of them are digital sales are up. And I can understand this as someone who has been buying and reading comic books since I was, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8. My comic book collection has gotten out of hand. For anyone just joining the channel, welcome. But for those of you that have been part of the channel for a while, you guys know that I started organizing a lot of my shit just last month. And it is hard to continuously buy physical copies of stuff because your space is not infinite, right? It's finite, meaning like you will run out of space eventually. That's one of the problems I think that comic book retailers have, is that they've been betting on people continuously buying floppies, even though eventually what ends up occurring is like someone like me, I'm gonna downsize my comic book collection because I don't reread all of them all the time and I'm not a collector. So the idea is that I'd rather just hold on to the shit that I'm gonna read and reread. And there's certain artists that I follow that definitely when they drop something new, I purchase it. But for the most part, I am starting to buy more comic books online. And these are comic books that I don't really think that I am going to read and reread, but something that piques my interest that I'm like, I want to peep that out, but I don't want to own the physical copy because I don't want to give it the space in the house. Everybody's downsizing. Not everyone has a lot of space, and space is becoming much more, you have to become much more conscious of the space that you have and how to utilize it. And that's why, you'll see things like Murphy beds being much more popular and just people always looking for new solutions just to organize their space. The second thing is that the cost of comics and comic book printing are going up, thus causing the price of each individual issue to go up, meaning that people are going to buy less comics. Once again, like this is something that's much more nuanced than just Marvel DC. This is something that like, because people are beginning to make less due to multiple factors, but money is becoming scarce, meaning that you're gonna buy less comics because most comics on average are costing about $5 to $6, and I think some of the lower end ones are $4. But like that's fairly expensive. That's not something that you're gonna go in there and buy 10, 20, 30 comics. You know what I mean? Not like when they were $2. I remember going in there and buying 10 comics because $20. Yeah, that's fine. The other thing that comic book retailers are having a hard time with is real estate. A lot of times comic book shops, they try to find something that's reasonable square footage per dollar, but like it's all going up, man. And you know, the cost of having a brick and mortar location is going up. So their rent has gone up. People are not buying as many comics, and so you're getting fewer sales. And people, you know, that combination is obviously something that is detrimental to any brick and mortar business. Second 2 points is that most of the comic book sales are actually coming from big box retail stores. And this is very interesting because DC's distribution company, right, that they left Diamond Distribution and started their own kind of distribution company, even though I think they're saying it's a separate company, but my understanding is that DC is kind of running it. They're allowing things like Barnes and Nobles to carry their floppies and their magazine racks. And so you're gonna start seeing that coming back. Like, for anyone that remembers when you used to be able to go to like Walden's bookstore and they would have floppy comic books for you to get, that's gonna be something that I think we're gonna see coming back, but that's only gonna take it away more from retail shop. And so that's gonna be something that's gonna hurt the comic retailers, as that was the whole thing with Diamond Distribution, right, with Marvel and DC, was that they kind of made this commitment to the comic retailers that like, you will be the only ones to get floppies from us. Right, everybody else, we can sell them graphic novels, but the floppy month-to-month issues only you guys will have. And then DC broke away from that, and now DC's opening it up so that they can actually have them on the news racks, you know. And that's going to be something that potentially you're going to start seeing other comic book publishers kind of lean into, and that's really going to be something that's going to disrupt the comic book retail shops. And then lastly, which is, you know, this is something like Fantagraphics and a lot of us indie creators can kind of attest to, is that like there's a big direct to market now. Like I don't really feel the need to be in zine shops or comic book shops as much as I used to, because my direct sales to consumers are actually cool, you know what I mean? And when I think of something like Fantagraphics, I buy a lot of Fantagraphic comics. It tends to be the company that I've bought it more from as of late. But like, they're even selling their floppy issues online so that I can buy them directly from Fantagraphic. And I don't really need a comic book retail shop to buy these comics that are really speaking to me, that I seek out, right? Like, I buy them straight from the publisher. And I think you're gonna start seeing more of that. Another interesting example of that for me is Kevin Eastman's shop, where like I buy a lot of shit directly from the Kevin Eastman website. So like I don't need to go to a comic book shop to pick this shit up. I'm getting it straight from the source. So I think that's another thing that's growing. And as independent sales are growing and independent comic book sellers are doing direct to consumer, you're kind of like, you're cutting out the comic book retail shops. And for the independent creators, this is a good thing, because a lot of comic book shops weren't taking their shit anyways. You know what I mean? But like, for like, you know, Fantagraphics and for, you know, like I said, Kevin Eastman and other people that I've seen that have done this, they are kind of shooting the comic book retailers in the foot on this. But that's it, you guys. I just want to go over kind of these points that have stood out to me, of like, these are kind of the hurdles that I see comic book retail shops having to deal with, and trying to find solutions for those hurdles that they have. But alright, you guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, link will be in the show notes to the Big Cartel Shop, where you can get some of the comic book zines that I make. And beyond that, go ahead and like and share the video. Lates.